Hello, everyone. Welcome to this live session on YouTube where I'm Itamar Blauer and I'm joined with the fabulous Christina Azarenko, who is a very, very well-respected and truly knowledgeable SEO. And just introduce yourself, Christina, because you'll do a far better job than me.
Hey everyone, I'm Christina Zarenka, an SEO. On a serious note, I'm an e-commerce and technical SEO consultant based in Toronto, Canada, and I help businesses to be successful online using SEO. That's me, and I also teach people how to do this. I mean, how to do SEO properly. And yeah, Itamar, back to you. What we are going to cover today.
Yeah, so in this video, we're going to be looking at 10 skills that you need to know if you want to, well, the title of the video is to become an SEO expert, but really and truly, it's very fundamental skills that I think anyone who wants to develop their skill set with SEO definitely needs to have an understanding of, and then be able to kind of use that and apply it in the way that they do things. And mind you that there are so many skills, and there are actually based on what we found, 23, specifically 23 core SEO skills that anyone needs to know when they're getting into SEO. So we're only going to be covering 10 of them in this video, quite briefly as well. So if you want to have the full list of 23 core SEO skills, make sure you check out seochallenge.co, because then you can get your free copy and have a look for the full list. So like I say, we're only going to be mentioning 10 in this video, and make sure you do get that copy because all of the 23 are absolutely fundamental. But I think without further ado, we can get started. So the first core SEO skill that you need to know is about keyword/intent research. And this is really important because it doesn't just end at keyword research. And it's also, I think, when we talk about keyword research, it's not about just looking at keywords. So what we mean by intent here as well is that when you're finding keywords is that you're seeing what the meaning actually is behind that keyword. What does somebody want to do or achieve when they're looking at a particular term? And that's a hard SEO skill as well. So there's going to be four hard skills, two or three soft skills, and then some SEO tools as well. But Christina, how would you define the intent research, and why is it so important nowadays than it ever was before?
Yeah, so intent is basically what a person, in this explanation, what a person is looking to find when they search for something. So for example, when I'm searching for buy a couch online, it means that I want to buy a couch, right? Or if I'm searching for types of, types of different furniture, it means that I don't want to buy, I'm doing my research. So that's really important. That's really important to tie this intent, what I'm expecting to see in the search results, to link this intent to what you are trying to rank in the search results. And researching this, I mean, understanding the user intent before creating the content is really important, because you can spend lots of time on keyword research, on like creating really great content, but if your fundamental intent is like understanding of intent is not correct, you're not going to rank this page. And quickly, one thing that I can recommend you here, there are many ways to understand user intent, but one thing is just look at the search results. When you want to optimize a page for a particular query, just look at the search results, what Google already gives for this query. And a little bit backstory. I feel that I missed this backstory a little bit about the core SEO skills. So that was the first one. We are going to cover 9 more, but I quickly wanted to share with you why I created this list in the first place. I've been an SEO for 10 years, and I see how much SEO has changed, and I know that new skills, new things are appearing all the time. And this list honestly could go with 100 points, but I just don't want people to get overwhelmed, because honestly, yeah, you can know a lot, but it doesn't mean that you need to start knowing all know of everything, right? Just small steps. So as Itamar shared, these are going to be basically quick 10 skills, but there are 23 of them. And yeah, it's very important to know them to be successful in SEO. And okay, should I move on to the second one?
Yeah, let's move on to the second, and
Okay.
that's mobile SEO.
Yeah, mobile SEO. This is very interesting, right? Because honestly, I'm not a fan of calling mobile SEO, but I just find that it's so much easier to explain it this way. So mobile SEO is basically making sure that your website pages are accessible on mobile devices, and accessible not only for users, but also for search engines, because of mobile first indexing, which basically means that Google looks at your mobile version of the website for ranking a website, for ranking your website. And starting from, I believe, March 2021, and we are covering skills which are going to be relevant in 2021, not only in 2020. So mobile SEO is a huge and important thing to understand. And if you've been in SEO for a while, you already know. I'm pretty sure that most SEOs, they already started, I think 3 years ago, looking at the mobile version of the websites. But now it's even more critical, because starting from March, Google won't care what it sees on your desktop website. And it's important to understand, because we usually, as SEOs, we usually go to desktop version of the website when we're researching, right? Because you don't audit websites on your mobile device. You just can check something, right? We audit or see websites on desktop, but Google won't care what a desktop version has. So mobile SEO is one of the next important SEO skills. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think when we think of mobile, and we think in the past several years, and we've been seeing trends, and consumers especially are focusing a lot more on how they access their mobiles, and mobile technologies have become a lot more developed and they're getting faster. So from Google's side, remember, they're all about how can they best please the user. So the end users, if they're noticing that more people using mobile technologies, more people are accessing and shopping and searching on mobile. And whilst this may not overtake desktop, it's still important to make sure that everything that you want Google to see is available on the mobile version of the site. Because if it isn't, from March 2021, Google isn't going to care, and it's not going to be able to pick it up. So that's probably the last thing I'd say about mobile SEO, but it's a very, very important hard SEO skill to take in. But yeah, let's move on to number 3. So the third SEO skill we're going to talk about is technical SEO. And Christina, this is one of your biggest strong suits in technical SEO. So there's quite a few things that go into it. Namely, would be, for instance, the definitions of crawling, indexing, rendering. Could you briefly explain what those mean and why it's so important for people to get a good understanding of it?
Yeah, sure. So I would not go into details about crawling and indexing, but in general, what for me technical SEO means is that you make sure that Googlebot can access all the content, all the important content on the website that you want it to access, and that Googlebot doesn't access the content that you don't want it to access. That's basically it. There are different ways to control it on the crawling stage, which is with robots.txt, on indexing stage, and other different HTML tags like canonical, metrobots, etc. But it all goes back to whether you want Google to access this content or whether you don't want Google to access this content. And then you have so many different scenarios which can go right and wrong, etc. And I've seen many of them. Like, for example, when a website would just accidentally no-index all the pages, or which is more sophisticated scenario is when a certain framework, JavaScript framework, is used, and then I had a client who suffered from this. We created really great keyword research for them, keyword recommendations, and they implemented it, which is amazing. They wrote amazing content, but they created these pages, but these pages didn't start ranking. And I was really, really curious, like what was going on. And I found out that they were using a JavaScript framework that was pulling the information to the body of the page, which was basically the main copy, right? But Google couldn't access this information. It could only see the main navigation and footer, and that's it. So basically, this is one of the things where technical SEO comes into play to make sure that everything is accessible. All the pages that need to be indexed are indexed, and all the content, whether it's on desktop or mobile, again, going back to mobile, it's indexed as well.
Mm-hmm. There are some really good points and some very kind of worrying examples of where it can go wrong. But it just goes to show that no matter how good your content is on your website, no matter how good your off page is, no matter like how many good links that you've built to site, if Google can't access it and it doesn't understand your content and it can't find it, or it's being blocked, then none of the other things matter. So, technical SEO is like number one fundamental of a site in terms of having a website. So your technical SEO has to be working well for everything else to actually make an impact. So that's really important. And it was some really good examples that you shared there. But I think we can move on to number 4, which actually is kind of related, which is HTML. As a hard SEO skill, and I don't want people to get like kind of shiver and be, oh no, I'm not a web developer. But I don't think HTML is like that. So Christina, how could you best utilize HTML when you're doing SEO?
So first of all, I think knowing HTML, and when I say knowing HTML, it doesn't mean that I can probably I could, but I don't know. It doesn't mean that I could and I can and I should code the pages from scratch. That's not the point. The point of knowing HTML and, for example, how to insert a link with a code, or how do you add strong, like how do you make the content bold or italic. And this doesn't mean that you're going to do this, but it just means that you won't feel intimidated when you are expecting the code. Because when you look at the page, everything was good, but then you see the source code and you're like, okay, what's going on? So knowing HTML, getting used to it, means that you're not intimidated by it. And it doesn't mean that you need to code pages. This is not what SEOs do. But you need to understand, you need to know where to look at. There are many extensions that show you, for example, the title tag of the page. But it's also nice when you can find it in the source code, right? And it's really easy. And again, you don't need to code and add a title tag to the page in order to know how it should look like, right? So that's where this HTML skill, one of the core SEO skills, goes from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think, and I'll just echo that as well. You don't need to know HTML to the point where you have to, code websites from scratch. It's more of just so that you don't have to rely on other things such as tools or extensions and different things. Knowing the actual raw code and at least what it means is really important, especially when it comes to actually trying to analyze it when you dig deeper into things like the source codes, just so that you get a better understanding yourself of how things are structured, how they're laid out, and what they mean as well. So definitely HTML is really important to understand. So I think we can move on to number 5, and we'll start now with some soft SEO skills. So number 5 is curiosity. And I think the word curiosity is like, you might be curious watching this now. What does that mean? So I think, different people can get their own perceptions. But for me personally, I think curiosity is all about experimentation. And it's all about trying to think of different things. And it's always about, questioning. So, as an SEO, I don't think it's good enough just kind of hearing, let's say, what someone says, and then kind of taking it 100%. And that's like the only way you're going to do things. I think curiosity means, well, what if I do this in a different way? What if I try something else? What if I completely contradict what this person is saying and try my own thing? Because I feel like at the end of the day, the results that you get from experimentation and testing, these are things that you will be able to have as more of a kind of objective way of doing things, because you can run tests, and if something works for you, then you can be at least pretty certain that you can try and replicate that, and you get your own kind of winning formulas, let's say. So Christina, what would you say is about, you know, curiosity? How can people be curious when it comes to SEO?
I think there is no way to make people curious about anything unless they are curious from the beginning. But I mean, they need to let themselves be curious, not be afraid to, again, experiment, and not be afraid to, you know, to find their voice and share their voice. And it's a huge topic, to be honest, but also, like, curiosity means that you are genuinely interested in what you are doing. If you are doing I don't know, if you're doing SEO, I think SEO is such a sphere where people really love what they're doing, because it's hard to do this without love. But I mean, yeah, and when you love what you're doing, you're curious. But also, a few things in addition to experimenting, there's also a thing, okay, when something already works, when it's working, when something happens, being curious means that you need to go further than anybody else. So you need to understand why it's working. So, for example, if you know that how canonical works, but you see that Google doesn't respect a canonical on this website, why is it happening like that? What are other ways, what are other things Google looks at in order to understand which page is a canonical page? And it's just an example, but it's a good way to explain what curiosity in SEO is. And in addition to this, SEO is a very dynamic sphere. And honestly, when somebody tells me, oh, I used to do SEO 5 or 10 years ago, I know SEO. And I think, no, you don't, because it's so different now. And if you are just stuck at some point when you think, okay, I know enough, and you stop learning, you're not going to be successful. And this is a video about being successful in SEO, so be curious.
Yeah, some really, really good points.
Yeah, yeah. And the next skill is strong communication skills. And when I think about that, the first thing that comes into mind for me is when I looked at the framework that Arij Abu Ali created for one of her clients when she worked at an agency. And for those who don't know, Arij Abu Ali is the founder of Women in Tech SEO. She's a really great technical SEO, and but it's not even the main point. So she was sharing a framework that was at the end not implemented by the client. And I remember this phrase like this thing from her talk, that at that point she understood that all technical SEO problems are people's problems, and that is very fundamental. Good communication skills mean that you will communicate with people properly, and that you will be able to explain why the company, your client, needs to implement what you are suggesting. Because in many cases, we SEOs think, oh, it's common sense. I'm trying to help you, just implement this. But again, if you don't explain to the developer why this is important, if you don't explain to the client why this is important, you might not see your recommendations implemented. And if they're not implemented, means that the company won't see the results. And if the company doesn't see the results, it means that you haven't done your job. I know that there are many cases that whenever you do, the client still won't implement. This happens as well. But at least you need to understand, you need to know that you've done everything that depends on you to make sure to communicate this properly. And that's why you need strong communication skills in SEO.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I've had time when I was working agency side where, there might be things that we understand in terms of the work that we do. And then, you've got an account manager, and they're the people who kind of feed back to the client. But sometimes if that's not communicated well enough between us SEOs and the account managers, then it's like, how are they going to be able to effectively tell the client what's going on and the implications of what it is that the work is? So absolutely, you know, communication is critical in SEO, just because there's also so many things in SEO. There's so many reasons, so many different practices that, you know, you might understand it, but don't assume that other people will understand it just because you do, and just because, like you said, Christina, just because you think it's common sense. So definitely strong communications skills are very, very important when it comes to SEO. But now we can move on to some tools. And the first one we're going to start off with is Google Search Console, which I find to be, you know, like fundamental, like 101. You know, you have a website, put it in Google Search Console, because you have everything that Google understands about your site. You've got it there. You can submit the sitemaps. You've got the index coverages. You can see your performance. You find how people are finding you. They give you some reports every single month about, you know, pages that are doing better, where your audience are finding you from, what devices they're using. There's so much to go in it. And I don't know. I think Google Search Console is probably the first thing that I kind of look to each day when I'm checking up on my kind of website or client's website kind of statistics. What about you, Christina? What do you love so much about Google Search Console?
I love that it's a tool where Google gives you first-hand information. So all other tools, like all third-party tools, they are great. I'm using them as well, but they give you an angle at which their own algorithms work, their own index, for example, index of backlinks, etc. works. So they have scores, but these scores are all third-party scores. Google doesn't use them. But when it comes to Google Search Console, is first-hand information right from Google. So, for example, if some third-party tool tells you that this page is not indexed, it might not be the truth, right? Because you can check it in Google Search Console. And if Google Search Console tells you that everything is fine, then everything is fine. So that's why I feel that this is a fundamental tool and skill to have, to be able to look at Search Console, look at the reports, understand them, and also keep up with the changes that Google Search Console always has. And talking about Google Search Console, the next skill is very linked to it. It's Google Analytics. And it's also changing as well, especially with the new GA4 property, which is a very new shiny thing. Google Analytics changes all the time. But when it comes to SEO, your work is not, your job is not just to recommend something. You need to also analyze what's going on. And even if you see the website for the first time, you need to be able to understand, okay, how much of traffic is coming from search engines. And you need to be able to see the reports, to build custom reports. This is very important. And honestly, I can't imagine a good SEO who doesn't know Google Analytics on a really good level.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think Google Analytics is very comprehensive as well. There's so many things you can do on there. You can kind of create goals. You can do so many things. But I think it links in really nicely to point skill number 5, which is about curiosity. You can be very, very curious when it comes to Google Analytics, because you can go deeper into any page on your website and really find out, how do people interact with this page? You've got your engagement metrics there. You've got data from where these sessions are coming from. And then all of this stuff is actually really useful when it comes to kind of feeding back to a client, just because you've got more data at your disposal. And if there's one thing that SEOs love, it's data. So you can get so much data from the likes of Google Analytics. But we've still got 2 more tools to cover. So I think let's move on to the next one, which is actually also can be closely related to Google Analytics, and that's Google Tag Manager. So this is where you're able to create tags and triggers to be able to create things like events, for instance. And you can even use Google Tag Manager to connect other different types of things. So you can connect your Google Analytics through Google Tag Manager, amongst other things as well. So Christina, talk to us about why Google Tag Manager is a very important SEO tool to understand.
Yeah, so basically exactly what you said. For Google Analytics, it's important to see what's going on the website, but for many things, you won't be able to do this without some third party, not third party, it's the same as Google, but without additional layer. So you won't be able to track events if you don't implement events code, right? Mm-hmm. Or through Google Tag Manager. And yeah, that's why I just love, tracking events or tracking outbound links, clicks. And also sometimes Google Tag Manager is used to implement some of the SEO things, like, for example, adding canonical or index tags to the pages. It's not an ideal solution, but it works. So I would say that it's just a quick fix that in case you are working on a longer term solution. But yeah, I know that Google Tag Manager is used for this as well. Mm-hmm. And okay, last but not least, because we want to keep this simple and keep this not really big, because we are mindful of your time. So last but not least is Google Sheets or Excel. I actually used to do lots of in Excel, but then when I started using different computers, I have my desktop computer, I have my laptop, I started using Google Sheets because of collaboration. But still, it doesn't matter. I know many people still use Excel for some reasons, but that's okay. So Google Sheets and Google Excel, or Google Excel and Microsoft Excel. I hope that they are not going to be offended because they're basically competitors. But yeah, Google Sheets and Excel, these are amazing tools that can give you ability to slice your data as much as you like. And for example, in Google Sheets, you can have URLs. You can pull up the information about title tags for these URLs. You can pull up the information with a special add-on from Google Analytics, from Google Search Console, which we already mentioned in this list. So it's a very powerful tool that you can use to look at the data and to analyze it properly. Yeah, what are your favorite uses of Google Sheets or Excel, Itamar?
Yeah, I think Google Sheets is just, like, as you mentioned, it's very good because you can use it on any device and it'll still keep everything that you have. So it's like ease of use is one of the most important things. But also the fact that you can kind of integrate it with many different third parties. So even if, for example, you can use a third-party tool and a lot of them will export it to either like Excel or Google Sheets, and you've got this data there, and you can pretty much utilize it if you're, when it comes to reporting, because it's a great integration as well with another tool that we didn't mention on this list, which is Google Data Studio. And you've got loads of opportunities to use Google Sheets, not just for the formulas that it can do, but just because you can kind of move it around and you can share data, use it for reporting. And it really is a fundamental tool. And I think once I switched over from Excel to Google Sheets, I haven't looked back. Like, Google Sheets is critical for a lot of the stuff that I do. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say on that. But yeah, on that note, I think that pretty much covers some 10 crucial skills that you need if you want to become an SEO expert, let's say, in 2021. But yeah, thanks so much, Christina, for joining me in this video. And just remember that there are more skills to go through that we didn't get covered in this video. There's 13 more to be exact. So get your free copy of 23 core SEO skills by going to seochallenge.co. So any final words for the viewers, Christina?
So first of all, thank you so much. Thank you so much for staying with us, for sticking here. And thank you so much that you are curious, because it means that if you're watching this video, it means that at least one of the skills is already, you can just mark it as done, because it means that you're curious. If you love SEO, keep learning, keep experimenting, and we'll see you on Twitter and LinkedIn.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, make sure to follow Christina on her social media channels. But yeah, this was great fun. And yeah, thank you, Christina, once again. And thank you guys who are watching wherever you are. So we'll catch you soon.